Hey everyone, welcome back to Great Northwest Weaponry. I'm Thomas and I just had the crap kicked out of my shoulder by a Berthier M-16 Carbine. This is a World War I French piece. This is actually the first military surplus rifle that I had added to my collection. This one is manufactured by Châtellerault. And the M16 Carbine primarily was manufactured by the Châtellerault arsenal. If you look at the spelling of Châtellerault, it looks nothing like the word Châtellerault. Thank you to the, I believe it was like 15th or 16th century French monks for making your language illegible to anybody that doesn't speak French. So, the M16 was an across-the-board upgrade to French rifles of the First World War that came about in 1916, largely due to from-the-top orders to increase the capacity of rifles to 5 rounds. The previous Berthiers were 3 rounds, and they're fed by a N-block clip. It's an interesting feeding design. I'm going to put that back. No, I'm going to put it in my pocket because it won't go back in there nicely. So, the carbine had a number of upgrades, so did the rifle, but the primary upgrades are handguard was added because, I mean, even now just having fired 5 rounds, I can feel some heat coming through there. And prior to the upgrade, there was no handguard, and it would get really, really hot. And especially when you're, in trench warfare, lobbing rounds of, 100 rounds at a time in the general direction of the enemy. And yeah, so the carbine primarily was made for the cavalry. And for obvious reasons, it's just smaller and easy to carry, and in World War I, particularly early in the war, it was very common, especially amongst the French, to have horse-mounted cavalry. So this was the preferred weapon of theirs, as well as artillery soldiers and such. But later in the war, like by the time the M16 upgrade was issued, of which they upgraded pretty much all of the existing guns that they could get their hands on, but also just made a bunch of new guns. This one, for instance, is dated 1918, and when we get this on the table, I'll show you how to find the date on these. It took me forever to figure it out. It's a massive pain, but yeah, it's an awesome piece. It's barbaric to shoot. It pulverizes your shoulder after a while. It's a 8mm Lebel cartridge, which was the first smokeless powder cartridge ever. We'll be talking about this more down the road when we look at an old German piece that I have, but it's the bullet that kind of made all of Europe freak out and go, we need smokeless powder, because Germany had just released their new infantry Gewehr 7184, which is what I have that we'll be taking a look at. And it was the first multi-shot rifle that Germany ever fielded, and they're very proud of this gun. Released it in 1884, and then it was either 1886 or 1887. The French made it obsolete by making the 8mm rimmed Lebel cartridge, and everybody's hair caught on fire and running around trying to figure out what to do. So at the time that the cartridge was developed, it was very forward-thinking, and there are some more minor upgrades to this gun because, like I said, the French soldiers were fairly demoralized by the firing power of the Germans. Just from having that extra 2 rounds after you've gone through several magazines translates to several fewer reloads, and making this 5-round clip kind of balanced that out a bit. And I've read somewhere that order to increase the capacity to 5 rounds was actually issued from the very top, from Joseph Joffre, or again, French. I don't speak French. One thing that was changed was the sight picture, and it's kind of a pain of a sight, really, because this front block is huge, and this back your back notch is very, very low and close to here. Later ones, this was elevated a little bit to make it a little more clear, but the reason for the wider front sight was for, quicker target acquisition, because initially it was a very thin blade, and they found that for practical shooting, that made it harder to acquire target quickly. So you got this big fat block with a notch cut on the top on your M16 variants. So let's go ahead and stick this thing on the table and take a look at some things closer. Okay, so let's take a closer look at some of this. Now you see on the side here it says Contensuza, not Châtellerault, as I had earlier mentioned, the manufacturer is. If the gun is labeled Contensuza on the receiver, that is a Châtellerault manufactured gun. Contensuza was a subcontracted company specifically for the receivers. There's a couple of other modifications. Somewhere in the 20s, the cleaning rod was removed and filled in with a piece of wood here. You can see where the cleaning rod would have come out this forward ring here. This, I don't know who or why did this. I've seen conflicting things. There should be a stacking rod attached here, and you can see it's polished and cut off. I've heard that that was something that was done prior to World War II, as the stacking rod was kind of just viewed as pointless by that time, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Another addition to the M16 over the older model was this cover. So that was something that they found that the older ones, the magazine does not protrude past the gun because of it only being a 3-round magazine. It's all held within, but there would just be a hole, an empty hole in the bottom, and they found that that allowed mud to seep in quite severely and could stop the gun from functioning altogether. There's some other strange features. The carbine has the downturned bolt. If you get one that doesn't have a downturned bolt, it's probably not the original bolt. the bolt head should be turned down, but again, that's easy enough to check with serial number here and serial number here. Now this cutaway is something also that was done after World War I. They were finding that they were having a hard time keeping track of what was made because it was uniform all the way around. It covered all the way to the bottom, and it's actually under here is where your serial, or with where your date is. So if you depress this piece right here, this ring should slide forward. You're going to want to raise the sight to do this, or the gun will get stuck on it, or this piece that you're trying to get out will. Get it free of this back loop, and then you can just work it off. So you got a couple more markings under here, and there we go, 1918. So this gun will be 102 years old this year. Get that put back on there, and putting the ring back on, it just slides back over that that piece there that you depress. These were used with a ring and hook for the sling. And the bayonet's funny. I don't actually have the bayonet yet, but I found a few online, and I'm intending on buying one in the very near future. So that'll be something that is going to be happening. And a couple more things. I'd mentioned that Châtellerault made a bunch of carbines. I never mentioned anything about the rifles, and there's a reason for that. Châtellerault only made about 370 M16 rifles. They made, I don't remember the exact, I think it was like 290,000 carbines. And then the reverse was true for the other primary brand or manufacturer, Saint-Étienne. They made between 400 and 600,000 rifles and like no carbines. I can't find any actual numbers for carbines that they made. It appears that they just straight up didn't make any. So a couple other things that were supposed to be or were in the upgrade package. One was if you look at the notes on what the original upgrade package was supposed to be, it was supposed to include a dust cover, kind of for the same reasons as adding the mud cover for the slot down here. But it never came to be for whatever reason. I can't find anything as far as a reason why. And M16, contrary to some things I've heard, it does not mean model 1916. It means modification 1916 or modified 1916. Because it was in all but the couple of small upgrades, primarily the 5-round magazine. In every other way, it's the same gun as the Berthier that came before it. I believe it was the model 1897. If I'm incorrect on that, I'll post it right here. So M means modified or modification. The French word for it, I believe, is modifie. And yeah, so that's a bit of a misnomer there. There is no safety on this gun to speak of. Apparently the French in World War I just did not care about that feature of a gun, and I mean, if you're using a gun in war, I guess that's understandable. One marking that I forgot to mention while we had this on the table is this N stamped on the top of the receiver. Now, this is actually very important marking to be aware of when looking at French rifles. The N stamp means that this gun, the throat and receiver were slightly modified to accept the post-World War I ball N variant of 8mm Lebel. So if your gun does not have that stamp on it and you put ball N ammo on it, or in the gun, you might kill the gun. So that is an important marking to be aware of. That being said, it is very rare to find any Berthier variant that did not have that modification done to it. The French were very, very thorough about their modifications. So again, I'd mentioned the cleaning rod. It's very difficult to find an M16 or earlier with the cleaning rod still in place, because they decided that they didn't want a cleaning rod, decided to go with the pull string cleaning kit, of which is something still used widely today as a pull string cleaning kit. But that is a couple of the more minor modifications that pretty much did not get overlooked in any gun that maintained being in French service after the First World War. Let's go ahead and put another 5 through this guy. And something while we're going to do that, you notice there's tabs on the top of this. So the 3-round magazine only goes to there. They were designed, the 5-rounders were designed so that those tabs, those locking tabs, line up perfectly with a 3-rounder. So there was no immediate rush to get 5-round clips out, because this gun can hold the 3-round clips. They will lock into place properly, and that was very intentional and forward-thinking thing, because you're in the middle of a war. You don't want to cycle out every single gun you have in favor of the new thing in the middle of the biggest conflict that your country's ever been involved in. So yeah, just a couple last little notes on that. Again, with this, you just slide it in. It's a piece of cake. Sometimes it has a little bit of trouble grabbing the bullets. They are a rimmed cartridge, so you may have noticed at the beginning of the video I had a little bit of trouble grabbing the first round, and I think the second round too. That's potentially from rim lock. It doesn't happen that much with the end block clips, but it does still happen. So let's go ahead and shoot. Oh. Okay, since we had that happen, I'm going to go ahead and show you one more little thing that I'd forgot. The end block started coming free because apparently I had a bit of rim lock happening, as was mentioned. There's a button right here, and if you push the button, the block comes flying out. So, quick and easy way to unload your gun. It appears that I got the rims lined up right. Yeah, okay. Let's continue. All right, that's all she wrote. I guess the final notes I've got on this gun is some of its post-World War I and into World War II life. Namely, when the Germans invaded France, they were very fond of these. These were very common among German troops along the Atlantic Wall. And it's very possible that that's how this gun came to be in the United States, because it has all the post-World War I markings, but it has no import mark that I can find anywhere. So it's very likely that a soldier took this off of a German at Normandy or somewhere of the like during the invasion of the American and British invasion to free France. Also, they were very favored by French partisans because they were just easy to get a hold of. There was a lot of them, and they're small. So, awesome piece, very historical gun. I'm very glad to own this thing. And yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you next time on Great Northwest Weaponry.